Recently, Justin Trudeau's Liberals have been under intense scrutiny after connections between his family and the family of his finance minister, Bill Morneau, and their respective links to the We charity have come to light. The controversy is related to the federal government's awarding a major contract with We charity without competition to facilitate the government's $912 million Canada Student Service Grant program. A little background about the program. It was developed to pay post-secondary students for volunteer work over the summer months as one of the government's initiatives to deal with COVID-19. The program was designed to actually pay students less than the minimum wage, requiring students to volunteer a minimum of 100 hours, after which they would receive a $1,000 grant, up to a maximum payment of $5,000 for 500 hours of volunteer work. This pay structure works out to $10 an hour, which, while the lowest minimum wage currently in Canada is in Saskatchewan at $11.32 an hour. The We charity has also developed a controversial scheme to pay teachers up to $12,000 each to recruit up to 75 students for the program, which received a lot of backlash. The union representing government employees has also refuted the government's claim that it needed We to administer the program, insisting that the union could have delivered it without the aid of an outside contractor. Nevertheless, after the contract was awarded, it was quickly revealed that Justin Trudeau's wife, mother, and brother all had been paid for speaking engagements at We events. Worse, Trudeau's mother and brother had paid appearances after the Liberals came into power in 2015, with Margaret Trudeau receiving over $300,000 over 5 years. Forgetting the fact that the We charity is supposed to be promoting volunteerism, it seems unseemly that the Prime Minister's family would be collecting generous paychecks from an organization that seeks contracts and substantial funding from his government. In his testimony before a parliamentary committee, Trudeau claimed he tried to have the public service reconsider partnering with We. However, he ultimately did not recuse himself from decisions that awarded We the $912 million program. The contract would have paid the We charity up to $43 $43 million for its administration. Finance Minister Bill Morneau also appears to have some ill-advised connections to the We charity. Before his testimony before a parliamentary committee, Morneau paid back over $41,000 in travel expenses covered by the charity for 2 trips he took with them to Kenya and Ecuador in 2017. Morneau also has one daughter who currently works for We and another with previous connections to the organization. Notwithstanding these apparent connections, Morneau insisted in his testimony that he didn't feel he had to recuse himself from decisions made on the program. Morneau is, however, likely to have violated Section 21 of the Conflict of Interest Act, which requires members of Parliament to recuse themselves from decisions where they may hold a conflict of interest, and Section 22 that prohibits receiving gifts that may influence a member's judgment. In the end, the revelations about these connections ended up killing the government's partnership with We. And today, after being criticized for its coziness with ministers and staffers in the government, We has officially registered as a lobbyist. This hasn't ended the investigation into the PM and his finance minister, however, both of whom have previously been found to have broken the Conflict of Interest Act in the past. Morneau was found to have violated the act previously in 2017 by not disclosing his ownership of a villa in France. I guess he was so wealthy he forgot he owned an overseas villa. And since becoming Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau has also been found to have breached the Conflict of Interest Act twice by 2 separate ethics commissioners. In 2017, former Commissioner Mary Dawson found that Trudeau had broken 4 sections of the act while vacationing on the Aga Khan's private island. Quoting from a piece in the Globe and Mail at the time, Mr. Trudeau has maintained he broke no rules because public office holders are allowed to accept gifts from friends. But Mrs. Dawson concluded the 2 men were not in fact friends under the Conflict of Interest Act, having spoken only once in the 30 years before Mr. Trudeau became Liberal leader. The Aga Khan is a billionaire spiritual leader with contracts with the Canadian government, an obvious conflict of interest for the PM. More recently, Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion found that Trudeau had violated Section 9 of the Conflict of Interest Act for improperly trying to advance the interests of SNC-Lavalin. Quoting again from the Globe and Mail, The Ethics Commissioner investigation also found regular communication between officials at SNC-Lavalin and members of the Prime Minister's office, who coordinated efforts to find a way around Miss Wilson-Raybould's refusal to intervene in the prosecution of the Montreal-based engineering firm. The report disclosed for the first time that Mr. Trudeau met in early 2016 with SNC-Lavalin CEO Neil Bruce. Afterward, Mr. Trudeau asked one of his senior advisors, Matthew Bouchard, to oversee the SNC-Lavalin file and look at laws in other countries that allowed companies facing corruption charges to make deferred prosecution agreements, or DPAs. The government included an amendment to the criminal code to allow such remediation agreements in the 2018 budget bill, which was adopted later that year. The investigation initiated by the Ethics Commissioner on July 3rd will be Trudeau's third investigation by the office. Even without these previous rulings, the appearance that the Prime Minister and his party tend to cater to powerful interests becomes clear. It is especially damaging optics for a party that spent a decade trying to overcome the sponsorship scandal that plagued the party from the mid-2000s until it returned to power in 2015. We'll have to see what comes out of the latest investigation by the Ethics Commissioner. However, it already appears that one of the key players in the newest scandal may have had their fate sealed. Robert Fife, who broke the SNC-Lavalin story, reported in the Globe and Mail that a likely cabinet shuffle could see Morneau fired. The piece also is packed with insider details about how Morneau and Trudeau have clashed over policy direction in the past. The insider tidbits try to paint Trudeau as unhappy with a more fiscally conservative finance minister. The piece also tries to hint that Trudeau is interested in moving his government towards a more activist agenda rather than the incremental neoliberal tinkering they have mostly done up until this point. I'm honestly skeptical if this is a real change in policy direction versus merely an attempt to rebrand themselves in a precarious minority government to win over left-of-center voters. We'll have to see. We have seen in the past that the Liberals are great at speaking the language of the activist left. However, when they attain power, they often impede or outright break promises they previously made. Regardless, when unnamed sources connected to the Prime Minister are trying to bury the Finance Minister in the press, it's more than likely that his days are numbered. Especially considering Finance Titan, former Governor of Bank of Canada, Mark Carney, who recently returned from a much-praised term as the Governor of the Bank of England, is reported to be advising the PM on the economy. So we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, please like and subscribe and let me know if you think Bill Morneau's days are numbered.